Hey everyone, Shaun Stevenson here, author of the Throne series, and I have been trying to figure out how I'm going to talk about this book because there's so much going on in this book, and it is so complicatedly wonderful that I don't even know what else to say about it. So let's talk about it. This was a surprise, I am not going to lie, because this has probably one of the most misleading covers of any spooky middle grade book I have ever read. What book am I talking about? I'm talking about Spinetinglers Book 7, Snow Day by M.T. Coffin. M.T. Coffin. Now, this book, I'm going to tell you right from the beginning because I feel like I said, this cover is so misleading. This snowman, not in the book. There's no creepy snowman. There's no snowman plot. There's nothing with snowman. And I was trying to decide if I was disappointed by that because I saw this book cover and I thought, oh, this is perfect for like the snowy winter time to read. And it's going to be fun to like get into this book and like a snow monster. Like that'll be so fun to read. Because I do tend to like in these middle grade books, like the monsters and those sorts of things. But this one has nothing to do with that. And like I said, at first I was wondering, am I disappointed by this? But by the end of this book, I was not disappointed. I think I might need to start at the end. There are no spoilers here because I think this book deserves to be read. It is so... Let's start at the end because I have so much to say about this. So this book, in the end, is not what you are expecting. And I can't believe the date this book came out. I actually, when I finished reading this, I went straight to the internet because I looked at the front cover and I saw when this book was written. And then I went to the internet to look up a certain film, I'm not going to say which one, that I thought, there's no way that this book predated that film. It can't be because it's very similar in some ways and very different in others. But this book came out before that film. And if you have read this book, you might be able to guess what film I'm talking about. Now, if you really, really, really want to know what film I think this is connected to, go ahead and leave me a comment in this video and I will comment below. I will reply to your comment and I'll put a big long thing that says spoiler with lots of dots, you know, that whole thing. So that way, if people don't want that spoiler, they don't have to see it. But I think this book is so related to that film in some ways and it made it elevated so much for me. Now, let's go back to the beginning because this book has a very interesting structure. You, from the very beginning, are not quite sure what's actually happening. And that, at first, could be really confusing, because I actually went to go look at some people's Goodreads reviews of this book, because I thought, what did other people think about this book? And I was surprised at how many people said, oh, this book's really confusing, it's really hard to follow. And I will say, this is not a casual, like, Goosebumps book read where you can just kind of fly through it and be like, oh yeah, here we go, let's go into this fun book and turn my brain off for a while. This is a turn on your brain book and you gotta follow along. It is not a casual read. This was actually one of the more complicated books that I've read in the genre of middle grade spooky books, probably the most complicated. And I think that, to me, elevates it in an interesting way. Now, I will say, I really love more complicated stories. I think it's a lot of fun when there's lots of twists and turns, and there's a lot of things to follow, and then it comes together in the end. And I think this book delivers on that very, very well. I do respect some people do not think it does, but I think if you pause and you really consider all the pieces of it, it does come together and you can see the threads all throughout the book. And I think it is well done. I loved it. Now, this book is about, what's this book even about? This book is about a girl named Debbie who is on her way to school when it starts to snow. Now, she lives out in the countryside and she's heading into school on the bus, and there's a few other kids that live out that way that are on the bus with her. There's like 5 of them. And then there's the bus driver, Milo. So they're on this bus, but it starts to snow, and all the kids have been wanting it to be a snow day. They want school to be out, and then it's snowing and it hasn't been called, so the bus does come and pick them up. But then the snow gets heavier and heavier, and they get over the radio a message that school has been canceled. So Milo goes to turn the bus around, but the bus gets stuck in the snow on a back road. And so they are trying to figure out what to do. They get out of the bus, and then they are headed through the snow. Now, in between this, we are getting some glimpses into like nightmares that these kids have had. And we're jumping between the storyline of the school bus and these different chapters where there's a nightmare. And just go with it. If you read this book, just go with it. Be like, okay, we're at a nightmare chapter. The chapters are pretty broken up that way. Like, here's a chapter of a nightmare. Here's a chapter of the snow story. It does come together beautifully, in my opinion. So the kids are trudging through the snow, and they find this old house in the middle of the snow. It's getting colder and colder. It's like sub-zero temperatures now. They go inside the house, and that is when everything changes. People are disappearing. There is a sequence where they open up this one particular thing, and they look inside, and it cuts to a nightmare. And we do not know what's inside that place. There are just so many good moments where I just was on the edge of my seat. Like, I actually, usually like I kind of like, you know, I'm sitting in the easy chair and I'm kind of lounging when I read, but I like sat up to read this book. And I know this, just looking at this cover, this book does not sound like it should be this good, but it is that good. I loved it so much. And so I was just sitting up on the edge of my seat, the twists and the turns. At first when I was thinking like, what is this? Like, now we're kind of like, this seems like it's way out of left field, like what's happening? It all comes together. And when you get to the twist of this book, you're thinking, oh, A, that's so creepy. B, that's so clever. And C, where is this book going? Because there's still more pages. And at the very, very end of this book, the way that it ends, I gasped out loud. I sat up, and my wife actually asked me, like, are you okay? Like, is everything all right? And I said, yes, I'm okay. I just finished reading this book, and I went and I explained it to her. I said, can I tell you about this book? And she was like, okay, sure. So I told her about the book, and she even said, she's like, wow, that's really disturbing. And that's so creepy. And then she was like, don't tell me anymore. I don't want to have nightmares. So this book, so good. I think our main character, Debbie, she is really, really great. And I can't exactly tell you like the character development arc that she's going on, because it ties so beautifully together, from the snow day aspect of this book, like wanting a day off of school, wanting that freedom, to wanting something else later on, to all these different sequences that are woven throughout the book in these nightmares. It's just so well told. I think that her character development is really great. And where the book ends is just so spooky. It's a perfect ending, in my opinion. Perfect ending. I loved it so much. So now that I've rambled on about Snow Day, I just have to say, it's probably not a surprise. I give this book 5 out of 5 stars. I loved it so much. I think if you are going to read a complicated middle grade spooky book, this is the one to read. It is, if you are really into like plots that are a little more complicated, a little more to follow than a usual book, like this really did read more like a YA book in the level of complication, in my opinion, than a middle grade book. Like, this really is a level above other books. It could even be more like like a short story in that sense, where there's a lot of layers and there's a lot of things going on, and it's all laid on top of each other so well and so pieced together. I wish I could say more about this book with spoilers, because I feel like it's so good. So good. This is already, dare I say, this might be my favorite book so far that I've read this year. I've read 10 books so far this year, and this might be my favorite. It's very possible. It is definitely going to be, it's in my top so far. I don't know where it'll be at the end of the year, because there's a lot of books to go, but I loved this book. If you can get a copy of this, read it. I do not think you'll be disappointed if you like these kind of complicated books that are spooky, have kind of a disturbing like twist that just like kind of blows your mind a little bit. This is going to be a great one. So definitely check this one out. And until next time, everybody, keep reading. Bye.